All right, seeing as it's 6:30, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If everyone could stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we do have a couple of agenda adjustments for everyone because it's a very packed meeting this evening. So we want to make sure that some of our folks get in, get out. So we are we have removed any administrator or director's reports to our following regular meeting at the end of March because we have so much other stuff to do. We're also asking to move new business before our old business so that our student presenters can present, get what they need, and and exit. And then I'd also like to move our committee reports to after that happens so that we don't have to worry about that portion. We hadn't talked about that part of it, sorry. But this way that part is done and we can just focus on the larger part of our meeting and not have to worry about that. Do I have any objections to those agenda adjustments?
I would move we accept those adjustments.
Thank you. Second. All right. All those in favor? Thank you. All right. Now, number 2, to approve the minutes of February 7th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting and the February 28th, 2024 special budget meeting.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Is there any way to separate the two meetings for minutes purposes? 'Cause I wasn't at the 28th. So to make a motion for the 7th and you make a motion for the 28th.
Okay, so will you rescind your motion?
You could still vote to
You-
approve even if you wanted to meeting.
You were able to read the minutes?
I can abstain.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? All those abstaining? Sorry. Right. Number 3, we will go down to public comment. We ask that you please come to the mic. Please tell us your name and where you are from. We ask that you use no student or staff names for privacy reasons. Anybody have any public comment? Come on up, Mr. Swiss. Sorry. Well, you're going to introduce yourself, so. I just helped along your
Can I say Hello, I'm Ed Zulis. I'm a staff member. I'm a science teacher. I have to put on my glasses. I have come again to speak with you about keeping the science position at Oak Hill. Other members of the department would be here, but 2 are working second jobs and 1 is coaching a growing esports team. I'm going to start with an analogy, and this is short, don't worry, but I'm going to start with an analogy. Most of us have struggled with power outages over the last many years. And when we lose power for a week, we struggle through it. Some of us have small generators to keep essentials going, others have no generators. But either way, we are tough people that work through the situation, but we look forward to the power coming back on. And I have never heard anyone seriously say, well, you know, maybe we don't need electricity. It'll save us some money. We didn't have it for a week, and we struggled through. And of course, if you look for a generator during a power outage, you can't find one. You have to buy a generator when there's not an outage, which seems kind of weird. Well, I think this is an apt analogy for the science department. We lost a teacher. We struggled through the year. We could not find a teacher because the timing just was not right. But we are not ready to just say, well, you know, maybe we don't need a teacher. We didn't have it for a year. We made it through. We hope the school board is not ready to say that either. Last year, we lost our rooms to the flood, and they still aren't totally completed. We had the position cut, and then re-entered, then cut. And we posted the position at a time when people just weren't applying for jobs. The science department is tough, just like Manners Without Power, and we made it through. Last year I was in 5 or 6 classrooms in 2 days. I, a senior member of the department and department chair, was still displaced this year. I even taught against contract rules so that we could make this year work. We entered this year not knowing if we would be in our classrooms and not knowing what we were going to teach, and then all of a sudden prepping within a couple of days. And here are some casualties for not having the teacher this year. Science is no longer part of the bar system. That's the system where we track the 9th graders and 10th graders. Science was part of the 9th grade bar. Electives like credit recovery, infectious disease, natural disasters, and second investigation bio were cut. These are aimed at reaching students who may struggle to meet the science requirements. Bio lost a lab period, and this makes it very difficult for the top students, so we're hurting the people who struggle to meet the science requirements, we're hurting the top students, and we're also hurting the student body in general. Other electives like computer science too, and marine science have been cut. Last year the budget passed with the science teacher added back in. The public wanted this. Because of the timing, we did not find a science teacher. That means there's $100,000 budgeted this year that was not used. It seems like that alone could fund the position for next year, if it were only that easy. In summary, I'm hoping you put the science teacher back in. The public wanted it. The money from this year wasn't used. The OHHS Science Department made it through this year, but the students' educational experience, all levels, was not better because of the cut. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. They can't ask you any questions, I'm sorry, Mr. Mills. Anyone else?
Does that go for later too, so I can...
Seeing as there's none, we'll move on. So we are going to go into the new business part of 7.1 to approve the following administrators for one-year contracts from July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. Need to list them all? I guess I will. Marco Aliberti, Principal at Oak Hill High School. James Palmer, Adult Ed Director. Melissa Gagnon, Guidance Director. Amy St. Pierre, Principal, Oak Hill Middle School. Dustin Miles, Principal, Carrie Ricker, Libby Tozier. Michaela Stevens, Principal, Sabatis Primary School. Cherie Poole, Assistant Principal, Carrie Ricker, Libby Tozier. Suzanne Rennie, Assistant Principal, Oak Hill High School. Jen Hudner, Assistant Principal, Oak Hill Middle School. Brian Daniels, Athletic Director, and Norma Jean Audette, Technology Director.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question. Sure. Since part of our budget discussion is to bring at least one of those positions into our budget that have been funded by us in the school district. The decision has not been made yet on the budget. And if the board is going to bring that position in, and whether the committee will support it, is it appropriate for that position to be listed here to be on a contract if we don't know it's going to be in our budget?
So this position, if you approve, the contract, and then it's not supported in the budget, there would be a reduction in force.
Right, most of those contracts probably have a buyout clause.
Well, all of them have 90 days or so in the law, that we'd have to follow that.
Okay. Okay, so that's my concern, is that I know that for those positions that have been in our budget, that this is the time of the year, not only for them, but for teaching staff, that we have to renew contracts, right? And I think that's appropriate but for any new position that is being discussed and being brought in, I would think that we would postpone offering that contract until, one, it's put in the budget and the budget passes, and then we can hire for that position. It's just-
Yeah. It's your thoughts.
Right. My thoughts.
Anyone else? Nicole?
I was just curious on what are the contracts? Like, is it just the same as last year? Are there increases? Like, what exactly are we approving?
So these positions are in the CBA, so this follows their contract. So, yeah, you can go to their CBA and look at where they
Yeah,
are.
I have those printed, thank you.
Yes.
Seeing as there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? All. So 597, 404. That passes. We will move down to 7.2 to approve a 4-night stay in Pittsburgh, PA for the academic decathlon national competition scheduled for April 24th through the 28th, 2024. I had need motion before they can.
You can sit, yeah.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. And they are here to give us a little bit of information. And I think it was in your packet too. They sent you their agenda, correct, and their budget.
Yeah, there should be a budget, sort of a preliminary budget in the materials for tonight. So I'm Derek Anderson. I'm the academic decathlon teacher and coach at Oak Hill High School. Brought 3 students and my fellow chaperone, Katie Stubbs, who prepared this presentation for us. She went last year to nationals in Frisco, Texas with this team, where they took 4th place in the small school division at nationals, which was great for them. They had a great experience. They can probably talk about it a little bit at the end, but we'll go through it. You want to start, Destiny? There it is. So, yeah, we're 3-time. We've won the state championship here in Maine the last 3 years. Academic decathlon is sort of a challenging program where students study a different theme every year and are tested and give speeches and write essays and do all kinds of things with that subject. So this year it was technology and humanity. So there they are this Saturday. We competed at Halldale High School, and they did very well, pretty much across the board. So our proposed itinerary is nationals this year is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the week after April vacation, so we'll leave that Wednesday. I priced out potentially driving. It's just kind of logistically too difficult, a little too far. So flying out either, I've looked at a couple different options. It will depend on ultimately what the group rate is, but one from Boston, taking the bus down, one from Portland. They're pretty comparable right now, around just under $400 per flight. So there will be 14 going and 12 students, 2 chaperones. The competition is Thursday, Friday, and awards are Saturday. We stay at a hotel, the Drury Plaza Hotel, which is right downtown Pittsburgh. And the convention center is right next door, and that's where the competition is. So the plan is to do even better than last year, hopefully third, and then get some awards on Saturday, see some of Pittsburgh on that afternoon, and then fly back Sunday and arrive at Oak Hill. We'll leave early Sunday and come back to Oak Hill midday. So students will miss 3 days. I know that's important. They've been preparing for this all year, though, and it's really one of the ultimate goals that they've set. So I think it's important they go. Many of these kids are often on field trips and are often missing school, and they're really pretty solid in terms of making things up. There are some cultural experiences to do in Pittsburgh. It's not quite the kind of different world that going to Texas is, but I think it will be an experience. Mostly, it's one thing that's different from previous years. It's right in the city, so I think that will be interesting and will give us a lot of opportunities to see and do different things. In terms of budget, like I said, I priced out a couple different flights. $375 from Boston Logan once you factor in the bus and checking a bag, versus Southwest from Portland, which doesn't charge for bags. Pretty much the same price. Again, it will depend on pending approval, what kind of group rate we get. And then just logistics of getting to and from the airport. There's a little cost there. But the overall flight number I put was $5,800, which comes out to $484 per person once you factor in chaperone flights as well. The hotel, so the flights are cheaper than last year. The hotel is more, partly because it's a city hotel. It's downtown. So the total, I mean, once you factor in some suites, some queens, fairly expensive. Hotels have gone up a lot since the pandemic. I'm sure that's not news to anyone. But $194 for a queen per night, and then for a suite is $224 per night. So the total for 4 nights for 5 rooms is $4,000. And divide that by 12, it comes out to $333 per person. So that's adding all of it together, $910 per person. Pre-food, I will ask all families to pay for food, students' food over that time, so it's a little over $1,000 planned for each one. So our total fundraise is $10,920, but we've already made quite a bit of progress there and already have some money in the account, which I think is our next slide. So there's a travel budget set aside for academic decathlon. That's $4,500. Then in our local account, we have $2,600 from previous years. We've started a little bit of fundraising, not too much yet, but $300 in a GoFundMe, $1,000 donation already. These guys have been selling the world's finest chocolate bars all over Sabattis, Wales, and Litchfield in the last couple months. We've done a couple fundraisers in school. And then, we haven't really sought out businesses and connections yet, but we'll do that kind of in force after tonight, hopefully. So we're looking at raising about $4,000 more dollars, which last year these guys raised $19,000 in 6 weeks, which is unbelievable. So I don't see that being a problem. So then finally, maybe these guys can talk a little bit about the experience last year and hoping to go again. You all know Destiny.
Going to Texas last year was absolutely unbelievable, largely because of the amount of different people and teams that we met there. Getting to meet a team from every single state, or multiple teams from every state, particularly Wyoming, was really cool. But that was my favorite part.
It was my first time on a plane when I went to Texas, so that was a very interesting experience. And I think personally I got a lot better at public speaking. I won a gold medal last year for speech, which was something I was definitely not expecting. And it was just a great experience for everyone to go and for everyone to be happy for one another and to just kind of all do well and meet this goal that we hadn't been able to meet before.
Introduce yourself, young lady.
Oh yes, my name is Sarah Rosengdahl.
Oh, I have to speak. No, thank
Okay.
So every year, I'm Katie Stubbs, the English teacher and chaperone, I guess. Every year I usually join the state's competition and I help judge speeches and I help judge, interviews, yeah. So I like to go on this competition with them because I can help them on the day of their speeches and interviews and help them fine-tune those aspects and help calm them down is a big one too. Get them to where they need to go. I know in Texas when I went, it was pretty chaotic. They had to find their rooms, their conference rooms. They would sit outside and be a nervous wreck for a bit until they got called to go inside. So just being there, making sure they know where they're going. I feel like I have a little bit of experience in that now. But these guys have worked really hard all year. And their progress definitely shows for that. And it's a lot of work. And they have a lot going on now, but they're ready to go.
So any questions as far as the trip?
Okay. So there's none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Have fun. Have fun. Come back with all your medals.
Make us proud.
We will move on to 7.3 to approve an out-of-state field trip on Thursday, May 2nd, 2024 to Boston, Massachusetts for Oak Hill High School Red Sox STEM Education Day.
So moved.
Second.
And Marco is discussing.
Hello. Hi there, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. So I was provided some information from our guidance director, Melissa Gagnon, in regards to this trip. We're really excited about the opportunity here. So this is the Red Sox STEM Educational Day. I don't have a fancy presentation for you guys to look at, but I do have a flyer. All right. So it's the May 2nd one. They're playing the San Francisco Giants. But before that, they'll spend some time doing a fair amount of STEM work and projects. And so the itinerary for the day is approximate departure from Oak Hill High School is about 6 a.m. with arrival time back, again, approximate at 8 p.m. 20 students and 2 chaperones. School vans will be used and driven by the 2 chaperones, Derek Anderson, who was just here, and Mr. Jamie Bushi. The tentative plan is to park in Saugus, Mass. and take the commuter rail into Boston and walk to Fenway Park for the event. And this trip is fully funded through the MELMAC grant that we have. Permission slips will have more detailed information for parents as it becomes available. And I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my knowledge about the trip.
Do kids get selected? How do they get to be one of those 20 kids?
So that is a wonderful question, and I think it was probably put out there in regards to student interest. So first come, first serve, if you will. I mean, if we had more than 20 students, we'd make accommodations for that to happen.
Seeing as there's no, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? I'll be excited to hear a report about what this is.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move down to 7.4, the presentation of the spring NUIA data. I don't know who's up first. Drum roll, who's first?
Go to the next slide.
Can you go to the next slide?
So, can we have context?
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
Can we have context of what the scores mean prior to the presentation so we don't inundate the first presenter with all of our questions and then?
Well, there won't be any questions, so they're just
Okay.
presenting and there's no discussion.
Can we see the scale? That was like the slide before. This one.
I didn't see any.
This one. Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, you're looking at yellow, green, and blue.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. We can go ahead to the first slide. For Libby Tozier, we just finished our.
You've got the question.
Oh, yeah. For Libby Tozier, we just finished our NWA winter, so you can see our fall and winter comparison. As Kathy stated, anything over 40% is considered meeting the standard. So if you look up here, we have our students that are progressing throughout the school year. I do want to preface this by stating that at kindergarten there's a very large standard deviation, which means that we have students who are going to score extremely low as they're still learning to do letter, number, identification, and we have students who are going to score very high that come into kindergarten with a lot of prior experience from home, etc. So these scores, while they are a good representation for historical data, it's just a starting point for us as we move forward. So that is our math, and we have our 21% of math growth percentage of students who met their growth RIT score. Again, RIT score is our unit of measurement that we're using, the Roush unit, similar to other assessments. For reading, as you can see, our students here in the fall, again, fresh into kindergarten, taking this assessment on the iPad. So not only, it's interesting actually at the kindergarten level, not only are we taking their first assessment ever, they're also learning how to do that on the iPad and all these other things. So we are just getting that first piece of data, but it's also valuable for teachers to start to help plan units, identify students who might need intervention. So we do use this data for a lot of different purposes throughout the school year. So for reading, we had 36% of our students met their reading growth score from fall to winter. We're really looking at that fall to spring data for growth, as we stated in our original school goals at the beginning of the school year in the fall. So this is where we are in the winter. So school-wide goals, exactly what I just stated. From fall 2023 to spring 2024, we are looking for 80% of our students will increase their scaled scored writing by 1 point. I know it's small print up there. From fall 23 to spring 24 for our third assessment, which is the data that we were just looking at, we're looking at 45% of our students will meet their projected growth in math. That's our math goal. And then as far as behavior, we have other goals such as 85% of students will respond to our interventions for SEL by receiving 1 or fewer office referrals, and 95% of our students will attend school from September to June. So those are our school goals that flow into our data that we were looking at. How are we going to do this? Our action steps, like I said, we're starting to use this data more. We used it actually today in our coaches meeting with admin. We're also looking at Title I reading instruction, coaching support, data collection and analysis. Like I said, we have interventions starting at Libby Tozier, especially in literacy is our main focus. Monitoring progress and adjusting at our PLG today. We updated all of our data in our data table for the school now that we have fresh data. And of course, classroom visits. Action steps from now until the spring. Same thing, but really monitoring that data and making sure that it's consistent, and also working with those teachers for students that may be struggling.
We'll come back up.
Oh, that's okay. Don't take a break. That's all right. Okay. I got this. But I'm going to need to use this. Oh, thank you, Diane. I got it. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be sharing out at Sabattis Primary School. Pretty excited to show you some of the data that we've collected for winter. And even though you're going to see some goals that have been hit already, we're not stopping there. Okay, so this is our first grade math NUIA data for Sabatis Primary School. 49% hit, and we have that 45% goal. So we're going to continue to climb and have more kids meet their goal. So super excited about that. And then in reading again, 49%. So feeling pretty happy with meeting our goal for first grade. However, our goal is as a entire school. So if you see our second grade math data, we're at 42%, so getting close to that 45%. And then in reading, we're at 39%. So we're not far off. We're on a good trajectory. Oh, wow. We're on a good roll to get to our 45% goal. So we have the same goals as Libby Tozier, Sabatis Primary, Carrie Ricker. I'm not going to say it all again, but hitting that 45% for growth scores. And these were our action steps that I reported on fall to winter. And then this is what we're really trying to do winter to spring, because we want to make sure that those second graders are hitting that 45% mark, and then we're still challenging our first graders to continue. So differentiation within lessons and small groups. Teachers are really knowing their students at this point. We have a good plethora of data and able to target where students are, pull them for specific gaps that they may be needing, and designing lessons that address their specific learning goals. We have a lot of professional development, and that kind of ties into our next one too. We have coaches that are working with literacy, math, digging in through units, assessments, and how we can best support our students. Whether that's doing a coaching session, just kind of doing some co-planning, and just trying to meet each student's needs effectively. We're doing a lot of progress monitoring. So even though we have some students that have met their goal, we still want them to continue on. So it's a never ending where their goal is going to continue to grow. We have Title I services. If students may be struggling in either math or reading, we're able to pull students for extra help and individualized feedback. So when students are struggling with their academic work, just having a strength-based approach to helping students in those areas. Intervention strategies. So we have different things in the classroom that target exactly where students are, and able to work on those different content areas in a way that meets their needs. And then really we're in the thick of observations right now, and really just showcasing all the wonderful work that we're doing. We have an amazing staff at Sabatis Primary School, and just going into a room, it lightens up your day. There's some great work going on. Teachers are working hard, and kids are thriving. So that's it. Dustin and Sheree.
There we go. For our NWA math, as you can see, we have our spring up there. The reason why we don't have spring up there for Libby Tozier is a lot of those students did not take the assessment. We do take it in pre-K, but a number of students did not have it yet. So we look at our spring 23. Again, our school goal is fall to spring. And one thing to think about there is we see the 44%. We're not just looking at, oftentimes when we're looking at data, we're looking at the lower half, right? We're looking at those low students, trying to bring them up, which is what we want to do. We want all students to get to proficient. But when we're looking at school-wide goals, all students have a growth goal. So students that are scoring at the highest level, say a 220, 225, they have a growth goal as well, around 6 to 7 points. The higher you go, the smaller the goal is. As you'll see, the high school will be less and less. But we're also looking at students that are in the middle range. They have a goal. We have students that are below grade level, and they have a school goal as well. So when we're thinking about supporting that, and we'll get to the supports in a second, we're really looking at all of our students and how we do that. And we'll talk about supports in 1 second when we get there. So we have our reading goal up here, and that currently is at 28%. So what we noticed, for instance, in this area, was a lot of our higher students hadn't met their winter goal yet. And different things that we have supports for. We have GT. We also have Title I reading for those students that might be struggling a little bit. So we do have a lot of pieces in place to support those students, but now that we have that data and we see where they're at, now we're reassigning students into different groups to get the appropriate supports. Fourth grade math. We're starting to see those higher levels go up. As you see, it was 4%. We're high or exceeding grade level. We're at 9% now in the winter. Also, high average went from 18 to 19 to 20. So you're starting to see those students get closer and closer to reaching their goals. So 53% of our students in math have already met or have met their winter goal. Remember, we're still doing fall to spring. Huge credit goes out to our math coach, who has done a tremendous job with our PD this year. We are really utilizing our PLG time on Wednesdays to have a very strong and heavy math focus with third and fourth grade, which I think contributes to a large portion of this, looking at Tier 1 instruction, looking at other interventions as well for student support. For reading, here we have our students, as you can see in green, is starting to increase, moving away from red. And we have 42% of our fourth grade meeting their reading percentage goal as well. And in the spring, we're hoping to hit that goal of 45%, so we're very close. Those are our school-wide goals that we've discussed. And the action steps. So as you can see up here, monitoring that progress and adjusting, exactly what we talked about. We do that on a regular basis with our team, monitoring where our students are at, assigning them to the appropriate supports, and making sure those are continued throughout the school year. Continuing those action steps to get them to their goal for the rest of the school year. Really heavy on data. We focused a lot on that in math and reading this year, and making sure that teachers, all teachers, also ed techs, anyone that's working with a student understands where that student is at so they can get the appropriate supports. That's it.
All right, Oak Hill Middle School. So just to remind everyone, the middle school has school-wide goals for literacy and math. Their achievement goals, proficiency goals, which are in the upper left-hand corner. So for literacy and math, we are working towards 52% of our students meeting grade level math and ELA standards. And for fifth grade math, I got a flip, I printed them this time because I couldn't see them. We have, is this math? Yep. Still can't see this. 50% in the winter. Go ahead. And then our growth percentage for our fifth graders in math was 42%. In fifth grade reading, we had 52%, which was exactly what our goal was. And then our growth goal for fifth grade was 23%. Sixth grade math, 55%. And 44% of our sixth graders met their growth goals. 48% of our sixth graders met their grade level standards. And then growth goal was at 39%. Seventh grade math, 50% met their achievement standard. And seventh grade growth goal, 44% of our students met. 55% hit their reading goals. And then growth goal was 49%. And in eighth grade, for math, we had 59%, and our growth goal was at 60%. 65% was our achievement goal, and then 49% was our reading growth goals for 8th grade. I've already talked about our school-wide goals. Fall to winter action steps were targeted instruction, intervention strategies, working on intervention programs, training teachers, professional development on how to use those intervention programs, using strategies in the classroom, providing individual feedback for students based on their individual needs, monitoring progress, and classroom visits. And our winter to spring goals are very similar. We still have the ELA class structure where we have 2 different ELA classes to alleviate those gaps. We have math and reading. We're integrating that across all content areas. We're working on intervention strategies with foundational skills to support targeted needs. And we have ongoing professional development. Our math team is still working with the Maine Department of Education specialist, and we are working together, collaborating amongst teams, grade level teams, content area teams, and really working together to build those skills. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, hello again. We got some scores here for Oak Hill High School. Just a reminder, our goals are based in the growth area. School-wide, we're looking at 45% of our students meeting their growth goal from fall to spring. And so here's the breakdown for you. So this is 9th grade math. If you click to the next slide, Sue, you'll see that 46% of our students in the 9th grade met their math growth percentage. For a 9th grade reading, these are the achievement numbers that you're looking at here. Sorry, Sue, can you just go back real quick? It's okay. And if you can't go backwards, there we go. All right, excellent. Now, what was I going to point out about this slide now that I had you go back? Yeah, you guys were well. I appreciate your help, both of you. Thank you. With that being said, yeah, I don't know what I was going to say, so let's just go ahead and move to the next slide. My apologies for that. And so the growth percentage for reading is 45% for our 10th grade. No, I know, but the next slide is the 10th grade. I was just anticipating. We got to practice this a little bit more, you and I. 10th grade math growth percentage is 43%. And so here's our reading achievement numbers and breakdown here. And for our 10th grade reading growth percentage, it was 34%. 11th grade numbers and our growth is 39% for math. And this is 11th grade reading comparison. And our 36% for reading growth percentage for the 11th grade in reading. And 12th grade breakdown from fall to winter. You can see the numbers there. And our math growth percentage was 55%. And then for reading, those are our numbers for our seniors. Again, fall to winter. And it was 54%. And so they did quite well, which we're happy about. You can click to the next slide. There we go. So again, our school-wide goals are there. Again, it's 45% from fall to spring. And we've been working real hard to make that happen. I'll jump in and push it this time. These were our action steps from fall to winter, was to do the testing administration, to review the data, to break into 2 teams. So we were doing this school-wide. Everybody has a part in these scores, and that's 2 teams. It was, again, team reading and team math. We selected focus instructional areas based on the testing that we did, and then I did visits with all of our students to talk about the testing, to give it relevancy and context. And so action steps for winter to spring. We've done a school-wide data analysis and reflection. So how did we do, and how do we feel about the data that we're seeing? We had a lively discussion today in regards to students graphing data and how to go about doing that. So students will be doing that soon. And then we'll be looking at doing school-wide student engagement strategies in all classrooms with that building up to the spring assessment. And there we are. That concludes our presentation.
This PowerPoint presentation is posted on the curriculum assessment and instruction page of our website. So if you wanted to actually look closely at the achievement pages and the colors, you can see that there.
Thank you. We will move on to number 8, committee reports. We will start with our financial report.
We did a couple of things. Sorry, there's quite a bit that kind of went on. So we went over our financial statement audit. The key things, I guess, were that there were no material weaknesses, so it was a pretty solid audit. There were a few areas that kind of, for lack of a better term, needed improvement, but they were very minor, according to the independent auditor. We spent the majority of our time going over that audit. And then some other key items that kind of came up from the agenda was the bus fleet. The last time we had John Barney had brought to our attention about posing the question about selling some of the older buses, and now that we have the drivers, to kind of paraphrase his response, it says, due to some additions in our staff and some unexpected maintenance issues, he doesn't have any suggestions except for selling maybe our oldest bus in the fleet. I guess it needs repairs and some expensive repairs to get it to be viable again, and it's significantly older, so it's kind of not worth it. So, and then we were also given some more additional information about an AFLA grant. And then we didn't go into this too much, but as far as the work to explore local produce vendors, we didn't go too much into that, so I'm not going to go into that. But the big thing they did that was mentioned is that the Oak Hill High School insurance claim for all the classrooms and the water damage, that should be officially closed out by Friday, is what John Barney said. So I think I hit most of it. Great.
Thank you. CAI and technology.
Sure. I got the short straw. So we met today, and in accordance to our policy of reviewing textbook materials every 5 years, we looked at a new textbook for American history and met with the department chair and Marco to talk about the costs of that, which are built into our budget. And the last time that textbook had been reviewed and replaced was 20 years ago. So it's time for an update.
World history?
U.S. history. So this book had like the 2000s. The book that they had was like the 1900s.
And it was in the budget.
So now we will move back into old business. We will move back to number 6. 6.1, to approve the second reading of the following policies. IJJ, instructional and library media materials selection.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to send this back to committee.
Second. For
Well, I feel like we should dedicate a little bit more time in the verbiage used in the policy. I've read better policies from other districts.
So this is the second reading.
Right.
So we've done the first reading, and that was approved to go on to the second reading. So I think those changes should have been brought up then. As this is now where we are. We did the first reading, there were no changes asked for, so now it's being brought forward as their final and second reading. So this is what we are voting on. This is current second reading. Any other discussion?
I mean, is there a specific, are there examples of things that you would like to be? Because, I mean, a first reading is to go, if there's two readings, usually that's to allow 2 times of being updated or analyzed, right? I mean, is there a specific issue that you would like to be?
Yeah, I mean, there's several problems that I have with the policy as it is. For instance, the delegated responsibility for the selection of instructional materials is given to a library and media resource staff, but that means that that person could basically subject their own personal ideas into the selections. There's no, like, some places have like a committee. That would be the, so you get sort of a mixed review of materials. Also the policy says that parents' authority, they have the ability to inspect instructional materials, but it doesn't give the parent, it doesn't specify the ability to review, say, media material.
Any other discussion? Laura?
Can I just ask a process question that if it's voted on and the majority is yes, it would pass and we would adopt that policy as a board?
Yes.
And if it's voted no, it would go?
We go back.
Okay. All right, thank you.
One other thing too, real quickly. It also specifically says that a review of the material will be based on the material as a whole and not just pieces or portions of it. Meaning, a book can contain like a single word or phrase or a photo or picture that is inappropriate, but it wouldn't be able to be removed because you have to judge the piece on a whole.
Yeah, question of the committee that looked at this is, I'm assuming this is the policy template that we got from Maine School Management that's been approved by lawyers and is used throughout probably the vast majority of districts in the state. There are some exceptions.
Yes, that is correct.
So I think maybe we're worried about the media specialists inserting their personal views into what's being selected. It might be the board trying to insert its personal views. We hire people that are experts in the field to do this. They get training, and that's what we hire them for, is to be able to use that expertise, give unbiased opinions on whether the book is valid for the grade span for the library that it'll be placed in. So I think the policy as approved at first reading should stand, and the send it back motion should fail.
That's on the poll first, sorry.
So although the policy was approved in January, when Scott wasn't at the meeting, he did provide comments. We did talk about them. I actually brought up comments as well, and asked that it go back. So, and there was also a comment made, well, you can talk about it again at second reading. So that's what we're doing, at least Scott's doing. I agree with some points that Scott has made. I disagree with Bob on the fact that just because it's from a lawyer or a legal attorney firm doesn't mean that we still shouldn't make sure that it's the policy that we want for RSU4 and for our community and our learners. So, I don't know. Go ahead, Laura.
No, I was just going to echo that as well. So, if it's always just to take the policies that the state releases in whatever format that is, then I don't really see the purpose of a policy committee, right? If we're just gonna kind of put them through. So I do agree that, it is in our best interest to review policies and, if it goes back 15 times, 30 times, at least once it's completed and it's voted on and approved, then at least we know we've all done our due diligence to the best of our abilities as a group, and submit those, so.
I'll just make a suggestion that if it does go back to the committee, that perhaps Scott and some others join that committee for the discussion, only because I think what happens is they get back in there and, my suggestion would be on something like that specifically, that you have more representation there.
Well, no, I think it was already mentioned. I just wanted to remind the board that we write the policies. We don't rely on the lobbyists from the Maine School Board Association or the law firm. And yes, you can take their suggestions, maybe, utilize that as a basis for your policy. But at the end of the day, we're the one that actually makes the policy.
Right, and they just recommend that if you do significant changes, that you run it through, because something were to come up and we went to court, they have to be able to back the policy. So yes, you can make changes. They just suggest if you make significant changes, that it run through one more time, just to make sure we are protecting the district.
That's what my reason for this is too, is I don't
Yeah.
want to see holes in there where we could be opening ourselves up to litigation, especially like, take this as an example where there's a parent is unable to review media material because it's not specifically stated in the policy. This only specifically says instructional.
But if we look at the definition of instructional material, it says textbooks, other print materials, software, and other electronic materials, online internet resources, including access and supplies and other materials to support instruction in subject area and implementation of the system of learning results. So in their definition, I think that was the assumption when you're looking at it. It's defined by this policy. And then as you read instructional materials, the definition is how it's listed on page 1
I
and
just
page
think
2.
policy should be clear cut, not based on assumption.
I just want to remind, this was from 2005. There wasn't substantial changes from what we've been doing from before. And also, when it's talking about professional staff, we have a librarian that is trained in order and uses a software that ensures that there's no bias, or it understands different levels of the books and different criteria, or if there's any kind of controversial content. So we do have a screening process when we are purchasing materials.
I was going to ask that, but I think I agree with Katie as far as it sounds like this might be the subcommittee thing that maybe Scott should be a part of with those discussions, just to throw that suggestion out there.
Just to add, when I talked to the librarian around parents and if they had concerns about what was in the library, they do have a process in place that when they get a phone call from a parent, they discuss different options and they do make notes in the checking out if a parent has asked for certain things not to go home. So they do a lot of working with families when there may be a book that came home or a topic specifically. So there are processes in place for individual parent concern.
So
I just want people to know that.
Right. So, which sounds fantastic that we have a librarian that's willing to do all that. But this policy is old. Like, how long before we review the policy, and potentially could we have another person in that position at some time that may choose to adhere to the policy slightly differently?
Or is that a written policy?
It's a procedure that all the libraries follow.
I mean, if something came up in class or a parent had a concern, they could easily bring it to the board, those specific concerns, or to a board member that could then bring it to a board meeting for us to discuss.
the next
There's a,
policy.
this is
Yeah.
what this policy's about.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what, yeah, that's what I mean, right, just
Yeah.
to say it out loud, I guess, right.
They're supposed to go to the teacher, then they go to the principal, they go through and then they can fill this out, though, and then a group would be put together to decide whether that would be something that was taken out.
But there had never been a form before. The
Yeah.
form piece is new.
Right.
They're trying to make a policy and how they do it, a procedure of how they do it, that they all do it the same way. Any other discussion? Okay, so, I have a motion on the floor from Scott and Laura about making this return. Do you want to continue with that motion, keep the motion there, or can we go to our original? Or keep the motion? So the motion is to have it go back to committee for review.
And you have two motions on the floor at the same time?
We never
Or
have
is
one.
it, or is, well, you can usually have an amendment to a motion. But you have two separate motions. You could have one to table it.
Motion to refer to committee and compulsory motion.
Okay. Then it can-
And it
refer
requires
to a
initial
committee.
revote.
Okay.
So if it fails, you go back to the motion.
Okay, so all those in favor of having this go back to committee? All those not in favor of it returning to committee? So now
And
we'll,
it fails.
Fails.
so now we'll return to
Still have to
the,
have the number.
or the original motion of, approving the second reading for the policy IJJ, instructional and library media materials collection. All those in favor?
Can you, yeah.
So,
You gotta answer those opposed.
yeah, I'm going. I just want to make sure you had everybody who you needed. And all those not in favor? Move down to IJJ-E, the challenge of instructional or library media materials.
So moved.
Any discussion? Seeing as there's not a call for the vote, all those in favor? All those not in favor? Policy JEA, compulsory attendance.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? Policy JFC, dropout prevention, student withdrawal from school.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Laura?
Was this the first reading?
No,
this is the
reading.
second.
Okay, thank you.
Second, the second reading.
These are all second.
These are all second readings, second in a row.
Okay, thank you.
We talked about dropout prevention and school committee, dropout prevention committee versus school committee, do you remember?
Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? Policy JLF, reporting child abuse and neglect.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Laura?
I'm sorry. I don't mean to make it go all night, but I know that there was discussion about this at the few meetings ago. Was there any update to what those discussion points were?
I think the question. Yeah, Kathy, do you want to say you reviewed the DHHS wording?
Yep, so when I reviewed the tags, when you look at the references in there, there's actually pages of definitions that actually define right in the law of like neglect, abuse, and it breaks it all down. So at this point, we didn't feel like it was necessary to put it in the policy because it is part of statute. So we went through, the only changes are in here are what the changes were to the law. And then everything that was asked for definitions, there's actually a page in the law with definitions.
And there was a definition for emotional injury or impairment? Because I looked myself and I did not see it.
I can look again, but it had a list of all of them, or it broke it down into the categories of how it was defined.
And you didn't attach it or anything? I know
It's part of the reference like we normally do. It's just.
I know, but I specifically asked for that, so I didn't know. I mean, I don't have time to go look that up now, but if you didn't keep a side note of that or anything.
Well, remember, the board has to direct, not that you didn't mention, Nicole, we did research it and we looked at it to make sure that what was said in the policy coincide with the law.
Okay, but she can confirm that emotional injury is part of it, so I'm not comfortable that it's covered yet.
All right.
Any other discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? We will move down to 6.2. Budget discussions regarding cost centers 1 through 7, regular instruction, special education, career and technical education, other instruction, student and staff support, school administration, and system administration. Get comfortable.
All right, so we're gonna jump in, and just to let you know that, it's 7:30. We're gonna jump into this. Let's not feel pressure that we have to get through it all. So I want you to feel like you're getting your answers, not looking at the clock, going, this is a lot, and it is a lot. So next week we have a special meeting that is totally for the budget. Okay. So although we're going to add the other cost centers, if we only get through, 4 or 5 tonight and we want to move, okay, I want you to know that we can continue it. And that if things come up, we can come back to it too, all right? So the slides that I sent out to you, they've been revamped. We always are continuing, and we want to make sure it's clear, like you're hearing it tonight, but if somebody from the public got on, we want to make sure they're reading it, they understand it, where the reports are. So this PowerPoint is live on our website right now, and if there has to be changes, it will remain being updated. And then the reports that you have in your book are what they are online, and you have handouts from those. Those have not changed from what was sent out. So I just want to make sure as we get started. What our plan is that I'm going to go over the slides for the cost center. Then Samantha is going to ask, did anything, specific to the 3 reports. You had the summary, then you had salary and benefits, and then you had the lines that did not include salary and benefits. And so she's going to ask, are there any questions specific to those reports that you would like answered? And you can say line 22. Can you explain more there? And we're going to look that up, okay? That's why all the lines are numbered. So if there's one in specific that as you went through it, you're like, this one, Could I hear a little bit more about that one? We're prepared. And then we'll move on to the next cost center. So does that sound what you were expecting? Okay. All right, so we're going to get started and just remind folks because we're going to go over the first 7, and I just want for people who might watch this later, Article 1 would be Cost Center 1. So when we go to that public vote, they see the articles. So the article just subs the cost center. We call it cost centers. When you vote on it, it's an article, okay? And so these are, I'm going to go over these, but regular instruction is everything that happens in the classroom to all students. And you can see there what's in there, classroom supplies, instructional, the teachers, ed techs that support that, our photocopiers, dues and fees. Then we have special education, which supports all of our students in special education. And then career and technical, I am going to talk about that this evening, even though we remain not having funds allocated to that cost center. Then we have other instruction, and this is all the co-curricular and athletics that support our students. Then we have student staff support. All of this is like nurses, librarians, social workers, our technology department, libraries, that's all in the student and staff support. And then we have system administration, which is the superintendent's office, the business office. Then we have school administration, which is our principals, assistant principals, and our administrative assistants that support them. So regular instruction, this is our staffing. So when you were reading the report all about salary and benefits, this is what you're seeing, which is the classroom salary and benefits, unified arts, which is our art, music, physical education, a gifted and talented teacher. Then we have ed techs in this cost center, which are 2 in our pre-K program, 2 in our kindergarten, and then we have right now an open English language learners ed tech position, and we have 1 gifted and talented ed tech position. And then, of course, paying for substitutes. Materials that you saw in the other report would include classroom supplies, instructional materials, textbooks, furniture, field trips, copy releases, dues and fees. So anything that is connected with the staff in this cost center, this is what supports the programming. You'll find when you get online, you're going to click on building stats, and I did not print it. But when you get on, you will see where all our staff are. So you're going to click on this and you'll see all the staff, how many there are, not the names, but all the positions at that building and how many there are in that building. So you can compare. How many custodians do they have? How many guidance counselors? How many teachers? So forth, okay? And then that just gives you a good picture. Because sometimes I'm asked, well, what does Libby Tozier staffing look like? You can pick up. And under Libby Tozier, see all their staffing, all the Carrie Ricker, okay? We went over this last time, which was the projected enrollment. And so we talked about moving up our enrollment to next year and then giving you the class averages. And then also with the Oak Hill High School, if you click on that, again, it's going to bring you to the course offerings. The guidance director, Mel Gagnon, she did some other things to this that you can look at. So what she did is there's some classes have combined. So before they were listed out, but they were taught at the same time with the same teacher. So there might have been 2 courses, but I had 2 sections with me. So like a language might be like, well, you can see. If you look in the blue, there was combined art. So Art 1 and Advanced Studio Art, she's running 2 programs in that class period. Okay? And then in purple is graduation requirements. Because somebody said, well, if I looked at those courses, what are part of graduation requirements? So she put those in purple. Mm-hmm. So you can slide down and go, oh, those are the courses offered for meeting graduation. And then if you see the different color, the blue, you'll see combined. Okay. Then when I did the comparisons, I took away the ratios because it didn't make sense with the combinations. It wasn't accurate representation. So instead, you can see the number of teachers for each department and what's required of that department for graduation. Okay? So just more information for you. We've added some slides in that was online. So here's what our students do after graduation. So class of 2023, 82 graduated. 33% went to a 4-year college. 35 went to a 2-year or a trade school. 0 went into the military, and 32% went to the workforce or other pathway. So this just gives you kind of a snapshot of what our students are doing after graduation. Then we're always asked, what do we do for advanced class offerings? So this was put together also by the director. So you can see some of them are our teachers are duly recognized that they teach a certain class. Thomas College recognizes that as a dual enrollment, so they won't just get credit for graduation, they also get credit for college. So it's a win-win for our students. Then this is kind of the overview of impact. So I talked about this at the last meeting, but the budget impacts here are the two open teaching positions have been removed. One is an elementary teacher and one is a high school teacher. Then we have one teaching position at the middle school will be moved from classroom responsibilities to the positive behavior intervention support, PBIS specialist. And then some of the drivers here are the increase in what we're anticipating as a 10% increase to our insurance costs. We won't know officially what the band is. We have been told we're probably at the top of the band, but the band hasn't been set. So that won't be until the end of March. As soon as we know that, if there needs to be adjustment to the budget, we will do that. And then there's a new law, and if you've read about it, there's a new paid family medical leave law. So I'm going to just kind of explain that a little bit, because you must have noted that in the notes, or notes about that. So we're still learning about it. We've had memos come out from both of our associations. We also, today, at our Western Maine Superintendent's meeting, we discussed it further about what does the law say, and so how do we prepare for what it says, knowing that they are still working this through. So this law is still in the rulemaking. Thank you, rulemaking. So what it says is that employers are responsible for collecting both the employer and employee portions of the combined 1% tax and remitting them to the fund. They haven't told us how that's going to be done, except that we have to withhold half of that percent, and we have to contribute to half of that percent, and the state is starting a fund, right, that we're all going to have to pay into, unless otherwise agreed upon. So the act provides that the employer and the employee will each contribute 50% towards the 1% combined tax amount. So this particular portion, this second one, pertains to us, in that if the collective bargaining agreement is going to expire before January 1st, 2025, so we're right now in negotiations with the support staff, the employer should plan to raise 0.5% of its district's wages in years 2025 budget and begin payroll withdrawing for the employee's 0.5 share on January 1st, 2025. And then payroll withholdings will begin on January 1st, 2025. So they don't go live, though, until 2026. So you have a whole year. They're collecting on folks. They're starting this fund, and then it's supposed to go live, okay? So what does it mean to this budget? So right now, the current proposed budget accounts for all employees with a 0.5% employer contribution. After our memos, after talking with Western Maine Superintendents Association, the budget will be adjusted to a 0.25% because we're going to be doing January 1st to June, right? So that's half the year. So the whole year is 1%. So the half the year is 0.5%, right? And so we, as the employer, do 0.25% and the employee does 0.25% for those who are not in a collective bargaining unit that is under contract and has not expired. So all of our other units, their collective bargaining is still in place next year. So they will not have any withholdings. They don't have withholdings and we don't have to contribute until it expires. Then, so when it expires, then they will be eligible to use that fund and therefore their withholdings will start. Our non-union folks, it starts the same as those whose CBAs expire before January 1st of next year. Okay? There's a lot of nuance to this. We're all still learning. And as I said, the language is still in lawmaking, so if we get updated anything in the next couple weeks or before you have to make your final thing, we'll continue to look at that. But that's our plan right now. Okay. That's why it's hard to put presentations together when information keeps coming out. So the increases in the regular instruction amount to $294,807. What we added is, we're always asked like per pupil expenditures. So on the DOE website, they compare the resident expenditures, and the last year that's up is 2022, 2023. And so I looked at that whole list of districts that are closest in enrollment. So I didn't pick the area ones because some districts are much bigger than we are, right? So RSU4, which is us, our enrollment when this numbers were determined was 1,303 students. Lisbon's was 1,303 students. RSU 29, which is Halton, is 1,243 students. RSU 34 was 1,275, and that's Old Town. And then RSU 38, which is Maranacook, is 1,143. So I tried to get as close to us in our size. So you can see in regular instruction per pupil for 2022-2023 year, there's RSU 4 and compare. So this is what was expended. So at the end of the year, the business manager puts in everything that was expended, and everybody does that, and this is what we have. Right? I do want to also note that it's not necessarily apples to apples all the time because business managers, codes, there's probably majority are the same, but there's maybe some nuances that a business manager said, well, that position I put in cost center too. So I don't want you to say, well, it's exactly the same. It isn't exactly the same. But this just gives you a picture of what other districts are size. Right? So I'm going to stop there, and then Samantha's going to answer any questions as you reviewed your reports. So I'm turning the mic to her, and she has been doing really well, not feeling well, as you'll tell with her voice. She feels better than she sounds today, but we did make her stay home a couple days.
Tough time to stay home, but so just a couple of things to point out. You have your cheat sheet about the reports, just so we know what we're looking at. So generally, for each cost center, you've got your overview that has the sum total at the bottom. And that overview is split down either by location or program, whatever was most appropriate. So for example, cost center 1, you have all of your instructional buildings, right? Carrie Ricker, the middle school, Libby Tozier, Sabatis Primary, and the high school, but you also have this 950 K-8 and 990 9-12. So those two places are where programming lives that's not pinned down to a particular location. Okay, so an example might be gifted and talented, right? That services different buildings in the district. You have your ELL programming and then alternative ed. So those are coded differently and they're not necessarily pinned to a specific building. So Katie mentioned the overall that we are up in cost center 1, just under 300,000. One other thing to note too in general, last year we left all the detail in the reports and we didn't round. There was some feedback that that would be nice not to look at dollars and cents. So all the reports are rounded just to the nearest dollar. So you will see just slight differences in the totals as compared to what was approved by the budget voters, what was approved by the voters in last year's budget. But it's de minimis, those differences, okay? So if you look at the second report for Cost Center 1, you're looking at all of the salaries and benefits for the staff associated with that cost center. So the first grouping is Carrie Ricker, right? And so line number 1 is the salary for teachers, regular ed teachers in Carrie Ricker. So noted in this year's budget, there's 12 regular ed teaching positions currently in that line. So when you look at last year and how there's savings there, a couple of things. So remember those 2 open positions that we've been talking about? When they went back into the budget in the final version that was passed, they went in as half positions, not full positions, based on the timing of the year. So that's not a full cut position, it's half of a position reduced. Additionally, when we build the budget, we do our best to take payroll at a particular point in time in the year, where everybody is and where they're coded currently, and build the budget off of that. So you could be looking at slight differences from fiscal year to fiscal year. For example, one staff person in this salary line is now working at the middle school. So that's another position that's not reduced from this line. It's moved to a different line because they're physically working in a different instructional space this year. Okay? We have no ed techs in the regular ed programming at Carrie Ricker, but the report's going to pull anything that had live action for the last 3 years, whether in the budget or in actuals. Okay? Any substitutes that are in filling those positions when someone is out are there. And also you'll see in all of these groupings the school-based stipend lines. Okay, so as we were instructed, those stipend lines list out what stipends are covered in those lines. So for Carrie Ricker, line number 4, those school-based stipends are teacher mentors at that building, team leaders at that building, and certification reps at that building. Okay? And then underneath that, so line 5 to 20, you're looking at all of the associated benefits, taxes, and deductions for the staff in that grouping. Excuse me. Any questions on that first grouping for Carrie Ricker? Okay. If we go on to the next grouping, which is the middle school, in the first line, 21, which is the teacher salary line, regular ed teacher salary line, you will see a pretty substantial increase in that line. So the position that was in last year's budget at Carrie Ricker moved to the middle school. So that increase represents an additional person as well as the increases to the staff in that line as well. Similarly, line 23, the school-based stipends, teacher mentors, team leaders, certification reps. I won't repeat myself on any more of those because it doesn't deviate much. And you will see a global note on line 25. Anywhere that there's a health insurance line, we're just noting again that we had a significant number of increases in insurance elections this past fiscal year. So we had over 20 individuals that chose to go from cash in lieu to having full coverage of some sort, whether that's single, family, parent with child, 2 adults. That's a big swing. So we're going to be able to finish okay with that, but it does affect this coming year's budget because before you even adjust a premium with an increase that you anticipate, you're already up substantially. Additionally, we do anticipate coming in, like Katie said, at the top of that insurance band. If we are able to adjust at the end of March when we know what the band will be, we'll consider doing so, but we'll keep you informed of that if there are changes. And on line 36, any coding that you see where the description says PFML, that's the account lines that were created for the new paid family medical leave law that Katie referred to, which is still in rulemaking, and we are still garnering information and trying our best to make our best decision about how to budget for that. Any questions about the middle school? Yeah?
Does everybody understand what she means by a band, insurance band? Can you just explain what that is?
Yeah.
what that means?
Yeah, sure. So we get our insurance through the Maine Benefits Trust. So they negotiate the terms of our insurance on the behalf of participating districts. So the districts all go in together, and their usage rate kind of determines like the percent band that districts can see for an increase. So in years past, it has been like anywhere from a 3% increase to a 9% increase, or a 5% to 11%. So you're situated on that band by your, I'm going to forget the acronym. Yeah, it's similar to that. So experience mod isn't the language I'm looking for, but that's pretty much what it is. So I really want to, yeah. But basically, it's how much are you accessing your insurance compared to other districts that are in the benefits trust. So right now, our usage rate is very high. It's over 1.2%. And that's why we anticipate being at the top of the band. If we were under 1.1%, because that's going to be right at like the average, right? If we were under, we would anticipate being on the lower end of that band. So the benefits trust meets, they review and negotiate with the insurance company, they set the band, and then they determine based on the usage where each district falls. Okay?
So I have a question, and I'm not sure if it was covered last time that you all met. You mentioned that, I'm not on the mic, I'm sorry.
You mentioned that there was a position moved from Carrie Ricker into the middle school for line 21. Can you just unpack that a little bit for people that don't know what that means?
So someone who was teaching at Carrie Ricker is now teaching at the middle school.
Okay, so when we see the difference for Carrie Ricker, line 1, that was the open position, not necessarily the person that moved?
Yeah, it's a combination of the two.
Okay.
Right, so remember that when you have staff positions, you also have to think of every person in there gets their contracted increase too. So if you kind of start with that, everybody in that salary line gets their contracted increase. And then if there are any changes to that line, like a position going elsewhere or being cut, then you reduce like that, right? So that 48,673 does not represent just the half a position that's gone. It represents salaries that went up, the half a position that's cut or not brought into this budget, and then a position that went elsewhere. Okay?
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay. There were not a lot of other significant lines in the rest of this report because they all fall very similar. The stipends are very similar. Not a lot of changes to either the teaching positions or the ed tech positions, and those global increases to, the big lines like health insurance and PFML are all consistent. So if you have specific questions on the remaining groupings, I'm happy to entertain them and answer as best I can. And the only thing I will point out beyond the high school line, so if you're looking at line 137, give you a moment to find it, line 137. Okay, I'm hearing a lot of paper stop moving, so I feel like we're there. On 137, that's where the lines begin for those programs that are not specific to a certain school building. So you'll see that grouping labeled 4,100 English as a second language. If you flip to the next page, you'll see salary and benefits associated with gifted and talented, and then finally alternative education. So while they're not drawn out in detail on the summary, they are drawn out in detail in those groupings in this report. Questions before we move on to the third report?
I guess if you could just explain the rationale behind the decrease for substitutes.
Yes, so if you remember on the budget floor last year, the very last meeting, there was an additional amount added to Cost Center 1 above the 2 half positions for grade 4 and science. So what we chose to do, because our sublines have traditionally in the last few years been overspent drastically, we put those into our sublines sort of proportionally. However, as we're coming out of the pandemic and we're seeing less staff being out for mandatory like 5 or 10-day periods, I would like to say we're still, halfway through the year, 3/4 of the way through, or 2/3 of the way through the year. We're hoping to finish with excess. So I did not build that additional back into the sublines. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right, so we'll move on to, yep.
So you can see after this report, most of the increase of the 294 is in this because the increase is 297, 639.
Yep, and that's a great segue into the third report for Cost Center 1, because these, I'll just finish my thought. Hang on just a second, Nicole. These lines are really stewarded by the building principals or the directors associated with this programming. So our building principals have done a very good job being thorough and looking through their lines and trying to find places to decrease rather than increase. That's why you'll see a minimal increase in the second or third report. Nicole, go ahead.
No, I was just going to have, start asking questions about the line by line, but if you're still going over the groupings, I just wanted to make sure you weren't changing cost centers on me.
No, I'm still in Cost Center 1.
Go ahead, you can go ahead and go through the groupings then. I didn't want to interrupt that.
Yeah, so let me just ask a clarifying question, because I feel like we're going over the report. Do you want me to read every single line?
No, I just didn't know if you were going to ask for comments on the cost center as a whole, or if you're expecting us to do them as we go, or if it didn't matter.
No, that's a great clarifying point. So my expectation would be, as we're moving through this report, if there's something that catches your eye and you want to review it, I have things in mind that I want to look at, but I feel like we'll be here until midnight if we're looking at every dental insurance line and, tax line, all that kind of stuff. So trying to point out the highlights, and I'd be happy to go in more detail if you felt like that was needed, but just let me know.
Okay, so then I do have a question on the Oak Hill High School salary for teachers. Considering we had a presentation this evening from our science teacher. And with the comment that was made about substitutes, I had that question as well, why we were putting more funds there. So being that the budget looks like it's, not very different for the teacher salary, considering that we had that open position, it was only half funded, and we have the contract increases to think about. What is the administration's position or thoughts on actually considering that science position for the budget this year? And I had asked about it at our February 28th meeting as well, and was told that there was no impact or very little, if any. And I think that we got a different perspective tonight. So what is the position
I'm
of
not
the?
sure I should address that yet.
I'm adding that back in.
Anytime there's a reduction, there's going to be different perspectives. So absolutely, if we could afford that staffing and other staffing, so in making a judgment of where we were coming in with the budget, knowing where we were going to be, stand by the reduction of the science position or a position at the high school.
Also, keep in mind too, as you look at salary lines, there's attrition. So staff who may have been at the top of the scale and retired and left might have been replaced by someone who, was a lot less expensive on the scale. So some of that could play a factor too.
So just to piggyback on that science position at the high school level, with every conversation that the public has had, and the board, and the votes, and the teacher standing here in front of us, we still take that stance that it's not a position that's needed in our district at this time.
I think you have to hear that. What can we afford, and are we still maintaining programming for students?
With that programming was cut, though? With these items that were cut?
In what you have the courses that were offered this year in science. We provided you that. You have every right to put that back in. I do a proposal because I know where we have to be possibly to sell the budget. And so that's what my job is.
And then my other question, can I keep going on the? So my other question is, all of this whole binder gets us 45% growth, 45 to 50% overall growth. What would we have to do to get to 80% or 90%? What would that kind of budget look like for our community?
That's a loaded question, Laura. What would we need to do? There's a lot of variety of that question. It's all in the way that, which they're working on. There's a lot of school improvement things.
I didn't say that they weren't, right?
So what?
I didn't say that they weren't working on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you want me to say?
What would a budget look like to get our students at an 80% growth?
So I would say it's not the budget, it's what we're doing with our staff, and the staff is doing with their students and supporting them.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions on this second report, the salary and benefits report? I will just note the school-based stipend line at the high school does have more stipends in there that are noted as well. So moving on to the third report for Cost Center 1, which is the report that doesn't include salary and benefits. So these are lines like repair and maintenance, copier and lease maintenance, supplies, books, and periodicals that Katie listed on the slide. Similarly, these are split out by location and or program. So it should mirror the groupings that you have in your second report. So again, you'll notice that the principals worked hard with their staff in budget building season to identify places that could be reduced, to identify needs, and they did a really great job. We did go out to bid for our copiers. Our machines are aging, but I did not build into this budget as a lease for that, as we will be able to put that lease, if we decide to go with it, in the next fiscal year, because I didn't feel, like Katie mentioned, looking at the whole picture, that this budget would support renewing that lease in this fiscal year. Some of the notes that you'll see for repair and maintenance, that's a question when you're thinking about regular instruction, what does that mean? So it could be the maintenance agreement for the laminator, which sometimes is housed in the teacher's room. It could be maintenance of musical instruments or physical education equipment. So all of those notes are embedded in those lines as well. You'll see that by grouping, Carrie Ricker is down $300 from last year. And by grouping, if we are looking at the middle school, they are down $3,270 from last year. Line 17 is no longer an active line. The grade level programming is no longer offered at Libby Tozier. Libby Tozier is specifically pre-K and kindergarten, so that's not an age appropriate or a grade level appropriate code for that school. Looking at Libby Tozier, their total, and they are up $100 from last year. And that's just the kindergarten program. Pre-K programming has its own coding, so it's line 26, 1011, line 27, 101121. The 1121 is pre-K. And their supplies stayed flat this year. Sabatis Primary, their total is down over 11,000. Also line 36, similarly, Sabatis Primary no longer has a pre-K program. That's at Libby Tozier. So that account is not valid at that school any longer.
So this doesn't have to do with that. It takes me a minute to process sometimes when things get said. Growth, you meant by student, like achievement growth to 80%? I guess from my experience in education, that would be stability would be one of the biggest factors of student achievement growth. I think the more I keep processing that, I don't know how you would be able to say what number of a budget, short of having a one-on-one tutor for every single student in every single grade in every single academic area. I don't know how you would get a guaranteed 80% growth. I think that's an unfair statement, I guess, is for me. I don't know. It seems weird. It's a weird one. I'm sorry. I'm processing. I'm trying to think. Like I don't know how we would do that, even if we had all the money we want.
I'm also a crock-pot thinker, so it does take me a little bit of time. But I wonder if we think about the pieces that contribute to like overall school quality, like classroom ratios. So like if we look at that throughout the district, like are we within kind of best practice pieces with classroom ratios? Are we that way when we look at how we're currently supported through our administrative practices and our layouts of like principals, assistant principals, school counselors? I think those are the pieces that really contribute to long-term output in terms of students' success. If they don't have kind of the building blocks and the foundation, that I think is our responsibility as board members to consider, I don't think we can expect like, okay, we're pouring in all this money, and we have to remember that young people are coming to school for 6 to 7 hours a day, and we can only control what's happening in the classroom. We can't make all of those larger societal changes that really get kids ready to be at school and to help them be successful. So what we can control is appropriate class sizes, making sure that our teachers have what they need to deal with not just the academic, but all of the other pieces that have been put on their plate, making sure that our central office has the things that they need to be able to support the trickle down to our building administrators, and really invest in the talent that we have and not nickel and dime and wonder like, oh, can we pull money from pens? Like that's not where it's at. I think we need to remember that we're looking kind of at big picture, systematic for this district, and making sure that we're adhering to that.
I guess that's kind of why I said stability. I feel like, in my experience, I've seen veteran teachers that have been there in their job for 20, 30 years have very successful outcomes with students with nothing, like literally nothing. And I'm sure there's a lot of us that can think of that. I guess it's just, I find it's always a weird thought to think about how just throwing money is going to achieve an 80%. You know what I mean? I think that's an unfair expectation of us, everybody involved here in this room.
And so I think, to kind of further a discussion around that, like we're kind of at that point we're discussing, right? So I think when you look at what does everyone need? What do our students need to be the most successful? What do our teachers need? What does our community need? And I think when you compare sometimes to other communities and other districts, test scores come up a lot, growth goals, all these things. So I think it was great. Our district this last year set between a 45% and 52% growth goals. And so is it achievable for our district? When you look at other districts, do we have all the resources? Do we have all the programming? Do we have everything that we need? And when we're looking at this budget that has a potential increase to it, how do you best get the community to support that as well with increasing programming for our students? I don't think that decreasing things is a good way to start it out.
Well, in all fairness, when we're discussing growth goals, we had no opportunity to ask questions of how we can best support furthering or increasing those budget-wise. I mean, I'm sure there's needs that they have that potentially we could address and help, but we weren't able to ask that.
So then my question being, if this budget gets us a 45% of our students they hit their growth goal, what about the other 55% of them? How do we get 80% of our students hitting their growth goals?
I think I agree definitely with Scott. If we could have suggestions from the people that are on the front lines without having names associated with that. I mean, I feel like, I kind of feel like it seems like tedious just going through every line. It seems like all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, but I'm not going to be able to help with any of that, knowing that we spent, $3,000 on gifted and talented purchase services.
So just back up. Maybe I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I'm being open-minded. So we've spent 2 months, 3 months putting this proposed budget together. We've met with administration, they've met with their teachers, and we've talked about what do you need for programming. So I hope the assumption isn't that we put a budget together that we didn't feel would be addressing meeting the student achievement, right? So yes, I could say we would like to have 5 more guidance counselors. We would like to have 10 more teachers. We would like to have permanent substitutes, 3 in each building. Yes, I didn't come in with a want. Because one of the goals is to be fiscally responsible. And so that's where I come in is you have every right to say, we want the teaching positions in. Then say it. We'll put them in. And then as we get through it, we have to sell the budget. I would love for you all to say, my gosh, it's up 9% at 1.9 million. That's fantastic. That's everything you need. We're not cutting anything. That's awesome. Right? So, but, yeah, no.
Nobody has said that they're not.
No, Laura, I hear, no.
Admin's not, what do they need, and this is what they're telling you they need.
Right, yeah.
I'm only trying to advocate for us instead of
Yeah.
spending the time on every line item.
Mhm.
If I think personally it would be more productive to hit some of the bigger hitter issues and try to work them out amongst what, maybe they're issues that we are in contention about as a school committee and focus on that and then have our discussion and then move on.
Last year, this was asked to do it this way, so that's why.
Yeah, line by line.
So
Yeah.
we're going to continue to keep going unless there's any other specific questions to the line items we need to
Last year I wasn't here when this was asked, so that's why I'm voicing my opinion. Okay. I'm voicing my opinion for not being absent last year.
So, not to start the question over with, I just need clarification on kind of what Laura's point was. If we are saying that we are trying to give them the best that we can, which I believe that we are trying to, I'm confused as to how conversations with the staff went to have one person come here and advocate for a position that we would like, to have that be the position that's still taken out. I'm just confused as how those conversations went together.
Okay, so you want clarification on why I landed where I landed, which is, I'm going to say it again, okay? So, in anticipation, and maybe I'm wrong in anticipating that there'll be reductions to this budget, I could put all the teaching positions in. And then if you say, we're going to need to cut $600,000, those are the first 2 positions on the list. Okay? There can be other things that we can discuss. We can discuss specialists. We can discuss multiple things. But if we're going to, in my anticipation, maybe I was wrong, I've never had a first budget go, so it's my history, and add to and go and go through. Okay? So after experiencing the budget season, these are the positions that remain open. Programming has continued to happen for the students. So they would be the ones that, if we're going to have a reduction. If we did not have the reduction, I could have put no positions cut into the budget. And we can do that. I'm anticipating at some point you're going to turn and say, that 10%, because probably with that increase, we're at a 10% increase, at probably a $2 million increase to the budget, that at some point, we're going to get to the point where you're going to say there needs to be a list of reductions. These positions will be on that because I'm trying to protect positions. There are people in positions. And there, it adds stress to teachers when we start talking about positions that people are currently in. So starting with the ones that are open, that was my decision making. So that's all. But this is my proposed budget. You can turn around and say, we want those positions in. I'm not going to, that's fine. We'll put them in. That's what, there's a give and take on that. But we take it very seriously about what happened. We did do exactly what you would hope is we went line by line with administration, to talk about actuals, what you asked for last year, what did you need, what else do you still need, and so forth. But that's just where we are. And I understand that what's hard is you're deciding the budget that goes forward. So we put our best foot forward in what we think is a budget that is fiscally responsible and meets the programming needs.
Yeah. So I look at, we have the open positions, and we could always use more teachers, and we could always add more programs. And we have. I mean, in the 25-plus years that I've been on this board, we have a lot more high school programs, subjects taught now, than we did back then. So we added a program here and a program there, here a program, there a program. You know how it goes. And so we're in this situation. So if every dollar that this budget is going to be above last year is going to be local money. It's not state money. It's all going to be local. So if we add $2 million to this budget, it's going to cost the local taxpayers more than $2 million because we're not going to get as much in state share as we did last year because property valuations went up, right? So we're going to get less money from the state this year than we got last year, and if we add to the budget, that's all local. And I don't believe we can go to the taxpayers at a budget meeting and ask for an additional $2 million and they don't cut it. And if they cut it, what are you going to take? So if you leave them out to start with, you're at least that far along. So just my thoughts on it.
Just at our last meeting, I asked for like the total, just to kind of work with. Is that something that you have like at least an estimated total for this? Can we have that as a number just so that we know what the total compared to last year is? Because I feel like that's an important piece of all of this. You don't want to go into the minutia until you know where your total lies compared to last year's total, right? If our total is less than last year, why do we need to be looking into cutting? If the total's equal, I don't think we can just roll with that. You know what I mean?
So we could do tonight. I think we're shifting a little bit gear.
Yeah.
Which is okay. So these are right now the differences in tonight's cost centers, okay? So just in tonight's cost centers, you can see where the increases are. We have in cost center 1, 294,000 approximately, in cost center 2, 570,000. So you're right there at 886.
Can you show the slide that you're reading from?
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at my. I know. Thank you, Kathy. You know where I am, right? Okay. So here's the overview for tonight. Go back. Yeah. Okay, so you can see that the increase to special ed will be $570,000, and what I think we'll do is I'm going to give you the overview. Then I think we'll go through our slides, and then it sounds like for next time, like Nicole, you said you had some lines. If everybody came in and there was specificities, we can do. All right. You can see a $100,000 increase to other instruction. Remember, that's co-curricular and athletics. Then in staff and student support, we're up $289,500. We are down in system administration, 58 to 11. And we're up in school administration, 167,819. So if somebody totals that up, and I see Doug is.
Yeah, I'm just doing the thousands, I'm like rounding.
I know, but we're going to do this right now.
So I got a rough change of a positive 1,366,000.
Okay.
That's a rough change, so that's, I can do the math.
So that's tonight, okay? And then you have 3 other cost centers that we're going to go over. There's 4. So Sam is pulling up she's working on it here.
That was a big increase.
I did increase and the decrease.
For these cost centers.
Yeah, for these.
And then, she must have, we're working it through here. So that's these cost centers. There'll be an increase in transportation, there'll be an increase to maintenance and operations, right? And then debt service is pretty standard, it's up a little bit, down a little bit because of interest. Yeah. So we're close to 1.9 million increase. But I would just look at
Again, with this, I'm kind of noticing just from my time is that like 75-80% of this budget is kind of a fixed thing.
Yeah.
There's not really much that we can
Right.
really, so.
the staff.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, a lot of things. We still have to put propane in the tanks and we still have to pay the bills and all that stuff. So there's a certain percentage that I think that I get the impression that the public accepts as a standard increase every year, or at least they should to some level, because everything goes up. The cost of living goes up 3%, they say, if not more.
Yep.
So,
right.
It just seems like when it gets extreme, that is when there's an issue and we could start going back to the specifics.
So that'd be about 9% increase.
Yeah, so our total right now is at $1,971,945.86 at a 9.14% increase. But you're right, Doug. If you looked at your second reports, which is all your salary and benefits, and you look at the increases of those reports alone, and then you look at what's the increase with the non-salary, you will see why it's driven by staff costs, which it should be. We're in education. Education is a people business, so that's expected. So why don't, because I'm looking at clock, why don't I keep going through the slides a little bit? And it sounds like, are there any major questions coming out of regular cost center 1? Yes, go ahead.
There was just a detail I wanted to point out in cost center 1 before we move on, just so we can kind of say we covered the 3 reports. In the 3rd report, if you're looking at the high school lines, so starting at line 37, you will see line 38, contracted services, is up pretty significantly. So that increase represents our contract with JMG. So we were able to remove that from last year's budget and pay it forward in the previous year's budget to try to find some savings to pass the budget last year. It is built back in, and it's a wonderful contract for us. We get a staff person and all of the benefits of JMG for that price. So if that caught your eye.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going. Okay? But write things down. Okay, Nicole, sorry, go ahead.
You want to do it today or next time? I'm fine if you want to keep going. It's going to be on this cost center, though.
Yeah, why don't we go back on next Wednesday? We'll go back and get into those specific detailed questions. Tonight we'll do the overview, see where we are and how people are holding up, and then Okay, but it's good that you're writing things down. All right, appreciate that. All right, special education. So just going over our staffing so you can see that. We have not only our staffing, we also contract service for speech, board certified behavior analysis. Those are people who come in and really help teachers in programs where students may be having deregulation. They come in, work with the teacher, try to see if they can help them be more successful. And then our occupational therapists, physical therapists, and psychological services are part of this. So you'll see contracted services, and then you'll see staffing when you look at that. So teachers, this is what our staffing is in our schools. So we have one teacher at Libby Tozier who does self-contained and resource room. It's a combination. So there's some students that will go out into the mainstream with their ed tech support, and there'll be some students that don't. It all depends, because it's hard with special ed because every student has an individualized education program that a team designs and that the teachers work to actuate. So it can't be just perfectly said on how it works, but I'm trying to give you a little picture here. So, and then you'll see at Sabattis Primary, we have one teacher that does self-contained and resource room as well with 3 ed techs, and there's 16 students. Now, this is anticipated for next year. Things can change, as we know. At Carrie Ricker, there's 3 teachers, and that got moved. With a behavior, one teacher does behavior, one teacher does the functional life skills, one does the resource room, and then we have a 504 ed tech. That should have been under ed tech, right? It's not a 504 teacher, right? Ed tech. So we just moved. We'll update that on the slide. Then we have at the middle school, we have one behavior teacher, one functional life skills teacher, and then we have 3 resource room teachers. And then you'll see the ed tech support they have as well. Remember, this Old Middle School has 4 grades to support, and you'll see the number of students enrolled. And then you have the high school has 1 behavior teacher, 1 functional life skills teacher, and 2 resource room teachers, and then 4 ed techs. And at this level, kids are really moving in and out with a lot of support, or they have classes designed for them to also have peers with them. So they take all the students and look at what's the programming, what's the high school schedule, and how do we meet the needs of those IEPs, right? A big component of this is what we call seed money, which is you'll see as behavioral day treatment line. So you'll see that and you'll go, what's behavioral day treatment line? We call that seed, and that's a payment to the DOE for billable main care costs. So we have to contribute in order to receive. So it's similar, and I'm going to go into it more. We have budgeted for 19 slots for students who attend out-of-district programs, and how we've calculated that this year. So remember last year we had that increase because we were going to 100% attendance with a 6% increase. So again, we asked, what should we be budgeting? And they said a 6% increase. So instead of going just 6% increase, we went one step farther and we averaged them. We just, because it's not all will be at 6%. So we did the 6% and then we averaged it down. And so the examples of where our students attend, there's Margaret Murphy, Pineview, Gartley Street, Spurwink, Collaborative. It's a decision by the IEP team around what's the best placement for those students, but we budgeted 19 slots. So what does SEED mean? It's all the services that our students receive in our out-of-district placements, which are medically necessary, and they're determined, and they're reimbursable by main care. So they will bill to have for those services, and then main care reimburses it. And those are the OT service, those are the BHPs, which are behavioral health professionals that work with our students in those programs. And we pay 38% of the claim for each RSU4 student attending. So we have to budget this. It's one of those non-negotiables, right? And then the main DOE pays this portion on behalf of the RSU4. This amount is reduced quarterly from the RSU4 subsidy. It's an expectation. So huge impacts in this cost center this year is the tuition, which is going to always be because I talked to the DOE, believe me, Nancy Dwyer and I are always on the telephone going, okay, what to expect, what's going on. And, you know, their programs, they need to be able to hire and program for their students, so tuition rates are set. Now, what we've pushed for is those tuition rates were not set till February of this year, for this year. So we're getting billed for retro, and it's so hard to plan. And we always advocate, why can't it be on the same schedule as our budgets? So tuition is up $198,422, and that C contribution is up $137,000. So that's why this is a major increase in this. Those are the drivers. Of course, I can't see my notes. And then looking at those same towns on expenditures, you can see that we do pay a lot for special education students. And a lot of that, it's hard to program because you have to be able to if we wanted to bring students back, we'd have to commit to having staff, well-trained staff, and facilities and location on that. So it's not surprising that we do. Cost Center 3, Lewiston, the Regional Tech Center, is expanded. Yeah, do you have questions for, sorry, do you have questions for Cost Center 2?
If you want us to go into these.
No, you're going to take notes. We're getting in the weeds next week. Okay. Then, so what's happened is, remember when the Lewiston Regional Tech Center talked about expansion to Edward Little High School, and there's more programs, which is great. We want that. We want that. Well, Lewiston School Department pays a lot of the additional dollars, all of it. So what happens is, you know, I've said it will go, they get our money. Well, they get our money through enrollment. So LRTC reports their enrollment, and then they get funded through Lewiston's ED 279, okay? But it's based on enrollment. And we have 69 students that are participating, and I'm going to show you a percentage of our students by grade this year. So this year, Lewiston is picking up $420,000 in local additional for all of us. 500, sorry, what did I say? 400, so we're $520,000. So their budget request was $5.1 million. Their state subsidy is $4.6 million, and the difference is $520,000. Okay, so they had approached all of us and said, "Could you start budgeting this year for CTE?" There were some of us that said yes. I was one of them that said I would put it in the budget because we have a huge group of students that go there, and it's a valuable program in that way. However, the agreement, which we had a meeting last week, the agreement was we're going to work on an agreement to bring to each board. So we're going to work on how to best make it fair and equitable around how to share this additional cost. It will come to each board for approval. We didn't talk about what if your board doesn't approve, but you can imagine probably what the answer will be. But, you know, if you've read what Lewiston's budget is this year for school budget, that superintendent is advocating to pay the $520. So we're hoping that's going to keep going. But their board's going to ask what you would ask, which is, why aren't the other towns helping with that? So we recognize that time has come, and most CTEs, schools, all the schools contribute. I think we've been fortunate that Lewiston, because it gets a lot more state funds, has been able to do it. But I want you to know it's coming. for next year, but it's not in the budget for this year. You'll see what our participation rate is for this year. So 5% of our sophomores attend, 37% of our 11th graders, and 30% of our seniors attend. Yeah. So our students really enjoy the programming and do very well in it. That's probably why you see a lot of our students go into the workforce. They get a lot of pre-training too. And my husband's in construction. They're always looked at early on. Would you come to our company after you graduate? We'll keep training you. Other instruction. I don't need to say much about this. It's athletics. It's curricular, co-curricular. It pays for the game day workers, officials, uniforms, equipment, supplies. So you're going to see all of that. You can also review this. Brian, working with administrators, updating how many students are participating in our clubs, how many are participating in sports. So you can see that for those two schools. Then for the high school, as you heard, the FBLA is one of the largest. We watched 207 last week, which was awesome. Then what our athletics participation is and what we offer. And I'll put a plug in for tomorrow at 3:30 is our last unified home game for our basketball team. If you haven't gone, it's away. Tomorrow, where is it? Maranacook, not too far. And then one of the impacts to this cost center is we got Sam goes to different trainings and so forth. We're moving the athletic fields maintenance into this cost center, away from the maintenance operations. So it's just moving it's moving out of a cost center into another cost center where it should be. It's more appropriate to be in the other education. So you'll see that's why there's a little bit of swing there. And then there's increases on stipends, as you know, with the contracts. So there's an increase of 100,000 there. So 75 of that is the move out of cost center 9. And then so then how are we comparatively? We look pretty good comparatively of what we spend for that. Student staff support, here's your elementary, your school counselors. Social work, we are still struggling. Anybody listening out there? We have gone most of last year and this year without a guidance counselor at Sabattis Primary and support at the middle school for 5th grade. So this is a huge deficiency. We keep advertising it, we keep changing it to try to get people enticed to come in. This is really painful, and we're really hoping we can get, Michaela, we taught, what can we do, how can we do this, and so continue to push there. Then you'll see social workers, the librarians at the elementary are 2 EdTech 3s. Our librarian at the high school oversees the librarians, so if they have questions, they call and ask. The middle school library is covered by a teacher who has a real passion for media, and so that's what we're doing there. Then we have as the nurses, as you know, this year we have 1 nurse position that's an LPN. That was a cost savings measure there. And then our technology staff is 1 director, 3 technicians. It's 3 because we moved 1 from ARP in to keep it at 3. It is 3 now. It'll be 3 next year to bring in that position. And then we have a data specialist position and a network system specialist. Then everything that goes into this cost center, you can see that, tuition reimbursement, travel, hardware and software. So you can take some time to read what are our programs in literacy, our programs in math, our science programs, our social studies programs, our social and emotional programming, how our technology department covers the district, all the technology that we offer in which schools. You can read all about that. Budget impact, this was the one where the assistant superintendent position was changed to director of curriculum assessment and instruction and the ESSA director. So next year it's budgeted at 75% to be in the general fund and 25% in the ESSA grant to pay for that position. The IT technician position that is coming in from ARP It will be next year funded 75% general fund and 25% ARP because we can bill ARP for July, August, and September. Then everything else is similar. Then we have a big chunk of software and subscriptions coming in from ARP into this cost center because those funds are coming to an end. So the increase here is at 289,500. How we look higher than other districts, and it can be, we would have to call and ask why. But it could be that we have nurses in our buildings. We have small buildings, and we're above ratios, right? So we have a librarian at every building except for SPS and Libby Tozier. They share. We have nurses. We have social workers. So we'd have to ask where are they and what do they do differently. System administration, the only reduction is an assistant superintendent position there. Then legal fees are here. We've moved things in here from technology because they're for this office. So they should be in this office, which is our business office, which is ADS, is how our business office runs. Then we have frontline absence management, which is running all of our absences, time off, time sheets. Then the big impacts here were obviously the move of that position. Now, with the withdrawal, Litchfield withdrawal, I was talking to Bill Stockmeyer for Durham Woodson about some questions that have been raised if you listen to the Litchfield Withdrawal Committee. And so I asked some questions. And as we were talking about it, he was really advising, and he's like, you need to budget attorney fees for this. Because if in November they vote to create a withdrawal negotiations team, that's what November, what I'm hearing the timeline is. If indeed on November, Litchfield decides they're withdrawing, you immediately, as a board, have to create a negotiations team, and Litchfield members would probably not be included, and you have to negotiate all the components of them withdrawing. That costs money. And I said, well, what do you think we should budget? He said $25,000, at least, right? He said it ranges from $20,000 to $35,000. And you're going to need it for the following year as well, depending on what happens and how quickly and so forth. So if it gets approved in November, they have till February to submit a draft to the Department of Education that they're withdrawing. So it's a fast, but it would be from November to February to get them to the DOE. So I'm glad I called because I hadn't really talked it through with them. So this is a decrease of 58 to 11. So it's not that whole position came out, went somewhere. There were other things got moved in. Okay. Then the last one, so you can see here with system administration comparatively where we are with the other districts. And we're lowered, except for one. Then you have school administration. You know what this is. The big one here is bringing in the assistant principal. You talk about the science. You talk about the other teacher. We don't have the dean in here. What we did, remember, is we took the 5th grade position and made it a PBIS specialist that would replace the dean position. So do similar to what the dean does, but it wouldn't be called a dean. So just, we had put an assistant principal. It wouldn't be in this cost center. Oh. We need to add what? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not on here?
Missing.
Oh, what happened to it? We got to put it back, we got to put it in. It was there. I don't know what happened to it. And then we have graduation supplies that were in 4, that moved in here. We got, by coding and so forth, it should be in with school administration because the principal oversees the graduation. So budget impact is the assistant principal position coming in. General fund will do 75%, 25% will be ARP funds. Same things that have been said in the other cost centers around paid family medical leave and insurance. But remember, we can adjust this based on new information, so we will update that. And that difference is 167,819. And there we are comparing our school administration to the other towns. There's the summary. There's the percent. So you can see the percent right now of our whole budget, 1 through 7, you're right. 1 through 7 is 42.6% is regular ed, special ed is at 27.9. So just of these cost centers. And so most of it is going to regular ed and special education, and then student staff support, then school administration, and then other systems. Bob?
Clarification, so the positions where we said ARP funds 25%, that's because we'll have those for July, August, and September?
Correct.
So next year, there will be no, people shouldn't think that that position is going to continue to be a 75-25 split.
Right.
It's going to be 100%.
Correct. You're right. So on next Wednesday, bring all your questions. So I heard people have specific questions, so we'll do that. And then we're doing transportation, operations, maintenance, debt service, other expenditures, and school nutrition. And we start at 6:30 with special meeting. We'll jump right in.
Katie, would you prefer us to email them ahead of time?
I do like to have things, I know some of you did, and I adjusted things and made sure we had answers. So yes, it is very helpful to know if there's something you're specific that you really want an answer to. Like Nicole, if there's something like, it would help if we knew ahead of time, send it. If it's something that we're just clarifying, we can clarify.
So I guess, I skipped reports because I had said we were just gonna skip it all, but Katie you have a report?
Well, I think it's really important, and I'm going to say it if no one else is to note that we have a couple of resignations, specifically Kathy Martin, our assistant superintendent, will not be with us next year, and I want to just give a shout out that she has done an amazing job for this district and will be sorely missed. And then you will notice, and of course the other folks as well, I'm noting some of the central office staff because, I work especially close with them. And you'll also notice that Nancy Dwyer is retiring at the end of this year, and she too just is so committed to our special ed students. I just love working with her and knowing she's just so talented in that area, just as much as love working with Kathy and all her expertise. So it's a little emotional.
Okay.
I'm good.
I guess that's why I skipped it.
Yeah. It's probably good you waited till the end.
But they're here until the end of June, right?
Yes, she will. Both of them. Mhm.
So 9 is board member comments. Okay.
I had a note, I wanted to bring those up too in case they weren't brought
Okay.
up, because I was really shocked when I saw this paper and I didn't realize at all. I also, I'm always concerned that sometimes things I say get taken out of context or aren't being heard the way that I intend them, but I totally want to give kudos to the coming up with the actuals, and I realize that's a ton of work, and I appreciate it. So, all the stuff I said isn't to knock the amount of work that went into that, and I actually think that going forward, at every step of the way, this is the ultimate reference to go back to as we work through the budget. So I think it'll pay off in dividends. So I just want to make sure that it's noted that I'm not trying to minimize how important it is to have those,
Without further objection, I declare the meeting adjourned at